Food contributes about a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions. The demand for food is increasing. By about 2050, there's going to be a demand of about 50% more food. And at the same time, the greenhouse gas emissions from the food choices we're making is actually getting larger. And so as we reduce the emissions from other sources, for example by switching to clean energy sources, food is going to be an increasingly large part of the greenhouse gas emissions problem.
Greenhouse gases are produced naturally in soils, in virtually all soils throughout the world. So these are gases that are produced by microbially driven processes, particularly the production of nitrous oxide, methane and carbon dioxide. What agriculture does is increase the production of those greenhouse gases, and that's because we add fertilizers to soil, which are a source of nitrogen, which can be broken down into a gas called nitrous oxide. We often plough the land, which can increase the production of CO2, and we can change the plants that are growing in ecosystems, typically in cropping systems, to a monoculture of crops, and that can also affect the production of greenhouse gases.
The food that's consumed most often that has the highest greenhouse gas emissions is beef. So when cows eat, the calories per day is about 40,000 calories for each cow, and about 6% of that is actually turned into methane. And methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So we wanted to really get a feel for the greenhouse gas emissions from different food choices. So we calculated the greenhouse gas emissions from 50 grams of beef, 50 grams of chicken and half a tin of beans. And we wanted to blow up balloons to match the equivalent volume of carbon dioxide that would be going into the atmosphere from producing each of those foods. Good to really get a sense that the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent is really depending massively on the food choices we're making. So there's lots of different technologies that we can try to employ to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. One of the problems is bringing fruit and vegetables from overseas by air. But if we can grow the vegetables and fruit locally using, for example, what's called vertical farming, where we can grow crops using lighting indoors, the progress that's going on now with producing meat-like alternatives, maybe even cells grown in the lab, which really taste and feel like meat. So there's really potential for some really quite creative solutions to this challenge. Now, all these technology fixes alone are not thought to be enough to solve the problem. So in terms of consumer decision making, then consumers are going to have to change their choices compared to where we're currently on track for. And that's where decisions about reducing the amount of animal products, eating more in season are going to be really important.
One thing that we're particularly interested here at Manchester is looking at the potential to manage grasslands in different ways, and in particular in ways that we can enhance the biodiversity of grasslands, which are very valuable ecosystems, and also to sequester carbon in soils. And this is drawing on well-established ecological principles, and I think there's an important message there as well, in that nature does a very good job at solving problems, and we can often look at the more natural solutions to these issues and apply those to agricultural settings.
I think if you actually tried to design the food which had the minimum greenhouse gas emissions, you might come up with something which was basically kind of grey goo, like in the science fiction films. So if we don't do something pretty sharpish about greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, that's kind of a threat for the future we maybe should think about. But in the shorter term, we can really do a lot by simply changing some of our food choices. It really can go a very long way to solving the problem. Hi, it's great to see you all. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Excellent. Well, hello to everybody watching, and thanks so much for checking out our Take a Bite Out of Climate Change project. I always wanted to be part of the Royal Society Summer Science exhibition ever since I visited one a long time ago. I was so happy to take part last year, and we wanted to let people know that food causes about a quarter of all climate change. But there's good news, because different foods cause different amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, so there's a lot we can do about it.
Yeah, we had an amazing time last year talking to so many people all week. Loads of excellent questions and lovely people really interested to learn more about science.
We've had a really busy year since then too. I analysed the online surveys you filled out and all the data we collected between July and September 2019 from people playing our online climate food challenge game.
We also travel around showing other people too, including the Blue Dot Music and Science Festival that takes place under the Lowell Telescope.
I took Take a Bite to Myanmar and to Brazil, running workshops for teachers to use especially the flashcards over here and blowing up balloons to show the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from different foods.
So here are the climate food flashcards we made for the Royal Society Summer Science exhibition last year. I chose this card, which is my daughter's favorite food, to show you how it works. You can see a picture of the food on both sides of the card, so on the back and on the front. And on the front also, we've put statistics on the food, including the amount of greenhouse gas it causes to make this food, here in black. Also, the amount calories of energy our bodies get from the food, here in yellow. Up here at the top, we've also worked out the number of minutes you have to drive in a fossil-fueled car to have the same climate impact. There's all sorts of games you can play with the cards. You could use them like top trumps, or build your favorite sandwich, for example.
In the film you just saw, we compared steak, chicken and baked beans, but what about lamb, cheese and lentils? You can see on the screen the flashcards for each. So it turns out that lamb and steak cause a similar amount of greenhouse gas emissions. They have a similar compartmentalised stomach that makes them burp methane, a potent greenhouse gas. So both have the same climate impact as driving a car for about half an hour. The numbers are less for chicken and cheese, but a lot of people are surprised to see that cheese is actually worse for climate change than the same weight of chicken. But again, it's produced by cows which burp methane. Then the numbers for beans and lentils are lower still. Mostly, the results depend on how you cook them. If you cook lentils carefully at home, then they cause the same greenhouse gas emissions as driving a car for about 1 minute.
I've been doing research on better ways of calculating greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts, and I've been testing it out on frozen desserts, including ice cream.
I went to the Gambia in Africa and got researchers and policymakers playing games with the cards.
And we also made some special cards in Telugu for a region in India. You can see from the photos that we changed the food so that they are locally relevant for this region. Indian diets are quite different to what we would eat in the UK, so they don't eat sausages or baked beans, for example, but they have lots of different beans that they might eat that produce locally, as well as lots of fruits and vegetables. Their diets also contain less meat than we have in the UK, so lower greenhouse gas emissions of their diets. Farmers use a lot more water to produce some of the crops than we do in the UK, but they use a lot less machinery, which means they have lower greenhouse gas emissions.
With some colleagues, we have been doing research on better ways to calculate greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts, and tasting it out in frozen desserts like ice cream, and also in baby food, and even in cakes and biscuits.
A bit healthier, I've been doing research on how different fruits and vegetables contribute to climate change. Also, I've been working with other Take a Bite teams to investigate the impact on different ways of cooking.
And I've been looking at lots of data in Brazil to find out about how different types of people cook and how that relates to greenhouse gas emissions from the food they choose.
We had a big meeting planned for the 23rd of March to plan our next big project. Lots of people had already booked their train tickets, but you might remember that was the day that the UK went into lockdown. So we had a meeting on the internet instead, a bit like this one. After a few more meetings, we decided to create new activities for young people to do at home during lockdown.
We decided to call it Take a Bite Out of Climate Change at Home, and we made 22 videos for you, all of which are available on our website for free.
We hope you enjoy watching for yourselves and get active by doing some of the activities too. Some of them involve numbers,
and some of them are more creative. I ended up writing a poem about cows, and one school even made an amazing rap.
Thanks so much for watching, and we really want you to help with climate change by finding out more about how different foods cause different amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. Thanks for watching. Bye!